Okay, welcome to part 3 for SPED 780, Module 7, Written Language Deficits. In this brief video, we're going to take a look at assessing written language and what IEP goals would look like. So when we assess writing, we kind of do it for 3 ways, right? The first is diagnostic, so really identifying where the writing barriers are, where the deficit is, and really giving us some good information on how to target that. The second is for screening or summative. Now, screening again can also be for identifying if the student is on grade level or where those gaps are. Summative as well gives us really good information on placement, on where the student is on grade level, and just some information on if our instructional strategies and our interventions are working. And then formative can really be formal or informal. It's really there to determine if the student's responding to instruction and if their writing skills are improving. So formative can sometimes be on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, those kinds of things. So when we look at formative assessment, there's lots of tools out there that we can look at. There's a link in your instructional resources related to looking at formative assessment. Part of the idea of formative assessment is providing us with feedback on what's working and what's not working. Also, formative feedback can be used to teach students how to assess their own writing. So here I've pulled out a little piece on sentence fluency, on how to have a rating system for students to look at and evaluate their own sentence fluency. And so it really just, formative assessment, the key thing we want to remember here is it's monitoring their students' writing progress to give us feedback and give the student feedback on an ongoing, regular basis. When we look at screening and summative information for assessment, here we're looking at really norm reference diagnostic tests, okay? And there are several tests out there that we can use for this. One is the test of written language, so the TAL3, you maybe have heard of it. It's for students ages 9 to 17, typically takes about 60 to 90 minutes to give, and it has subtests on vocab, spelling, punctuation, logical sentence, sentence combining, textual conventions, story composition, okay? The test of adolescent language is really a test for English language learners, but it also can be used with our students with special needs to identify some barriers within their written language skills. And this is for students ages 12 to 24, so this can be used even for our students who are still in school at that 18 to 21 mark. We could use it for evaluation there. So it just looks at sentence combining, orthographic use, testing word similarities, those kinds of things. The Woodcock-Johnson you're probably familiar with because we use this a lot in IEP development, especially school psychs rely on this. It has a test of achievement for writing that we can use. It also has a test of oral language that allows us to test expressive language. Sometimes it's helpful to see if the student has a barrier in language in general, or is there just this deficit between their expressive language is high but their written language is low, and really allowing us to see where those strengths and weaknesses are. So sometimes it's helpful to do that test of oral language. Now the tests that you see here are not tests that we're going to do every month or every 6 months. We may not even do them every year, right? These are tests that we rely on for placement sometimes. So as a student's coming into an IEP and we're doing testing to see if they qualify for an IEP. Or frequently it's tests that we look at for maybe 3-year reevals to really get a good picture again of what the student can and can't do. We're getting ready to embark on a 3-year reeval for my daughter who's in 2nd grade, and so one of the things that the teachers and I have kind of been talking about are what kind of testing materials do we want to look at, because we haven't done a lot of formal testing in the last 3 years on her in this manner, this norm reference diagnostic testing. And so we discussed, we're ready to look at some of this with her, the test of written language. Getting pretty close to getting to the age where we can look at that test. Just gives us good information as we're developing those IEP goals. Talking about IEP goals. So There's lots of different ways we can approach writing in the IEP. We can approach it through spelling. We can approach it through content, what kind of content they have in their writing. We can approach it through conventions and grammar. So I've got 3 examples here for you that I've pulled from websites that I think might be helpful as you're thinking about IEP goals. Okay. So spelling words. Giving a previously taught vocabulary word, student will spell or write the word with 80% accuracy in 4 out of 5 opportunities. Now that kind of goal can be used from 1st grade to 12th grade, right? Because we can even have vocabulary words that are content specific. So if we're looking at social studies or science, it could fall into that. Okay, so that's a really good goal if you have a student who's struggling with spelling that you can work on every year and just building up those vocabulary words with them. So content. So this gets back to really teaching students the process. So with the use of a graphic organizer, the student will produce a, let's say, 3-paragraph essay that includes a topic sentence and at least 4 transition words and a conclusion with 80% accuracy on a writing rubric. Now that one there may be more for students in high school. But we could also even adjust that. Instead of a paragraph essay, we could say produce a paragraph, right, for our middle school students or upper elementary students. And then looking at conventions and grammar. So given a 1-paragraph writing sample, at that student's grade level, the student will correctly spell, punctuate, and have grammatical errors accurately with 2 or few errors. Okay? So that's another way of looking at grammar within an IEP goal. So this kind of gives you 3 options of looking at written language. Some students may need goals for all 3. Some students may just have an issue for one of those areas. It really depends on that particular student and their written language deficits.